Okay, it is 6 o'clock, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is to nominate a board chair. I would like to open the floor for any nominations.
I'd like to nominate Eric from Wells Springs.
Second.
Okay, so we have, all right. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, I'd like to call for a roll call vote. Lisa, we know Eric. Thank you. Jessica?
Eric.
Eric M.
Okay. I was expecting 25 rounds, so I'm not used to this one, so.
Eric.
Big paper today.
Colin?
Eric.
Eric, I'm assuming Eric. Meredith?
Eric.
Tim?
Eric.
Amanda? Yep. And Jeff?
Eric.
Okay. Okay, by unanimous votes, congratulations, Eric, you are the GRC's board chair, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so I'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Lisa.
Nomination for Lisa Meiser. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right, hearing none.
I'll nominate Colin.
Okay, you're going to nominate Colin? All right, so we have a nomination for Lisa and a nomination for Colin. Any other nominations for vice chair? Going once. All right, hearing none. Close the nominations for vice chair, and I will take a roll call vote. Lisa?
Lisa.
I'm going to sustain.
Okay. Eric?
Colin?
Linda?
Colin.
Meredith?
Colin? No, did you ask Colin?
I assumed Colin, sorry.
Okay,
Colin?
sorry.
Lisa?
I was expecting you to go there, sorry.
Okay.
Lisa.
That was your vote.
Amanda?
Lisa.
Tim?
Lisa.
Jeff?
Lisa.
All right,
Appreciate it.
that is
You worked hard.
Lisa, congratulations for vice chair. And I will take nominations for clerk.
I'll nominate Colin.
What are the roles of the clerk?
Primarily responsible for minutes if needed, keeping minutes. Other than that, I think there might be some.
Like future roll call votes.
Okay. I can accept that.
I can't remember at the SU level if there were certain documents that needed to be signed by the district clerk, or the board clerk, I should say. But- So you're accepting the nomination?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for board clerk? All right, hearing none, I'll close nominations for clerk. All those in favor, as called in for board clerk, please say aye.
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 All right. Congratulations, Colin. That is unanimous. Remaining board members, we have Meredith, Tim, And Eric?
Jessica.
Yes. All right. Set regular meeting schedule, second Tuesday of the month, or first Tuesday of the month? I'll screw that up.
So moved.
Motion by Lisa. Discussion? All those in favor, setting our regular meeting date for the first Tuesday of the month?
At
Are you
6
sure?
o'clock.
Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Set date of annual board retreat.
I would suggest tabling that till we decide what we're going to do.
Yeah. We kind of did the same, so if there's no objection, we can table this by unanimous consent. Affirm use of Robert's rule for small boards.
So moved.
Lisa made a motion to affirm Robert's rules for small boards. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That's unanimous. Identify locations where agendas and minutes will be posted.
Schools, websites, and what else did you guys say? At Rutland Town, yeah, I thought yours were good, or what did you, I read minutes, so.
The Lakes Press, but I don't know, I've heard.
No, but I thought, like, we kind of talked about, it needs to be a place where it is easily accessible and always posted, so the website, it's always posted, schools, it's always posted, but I thought you
I
had
think we do the
someplace.
town hall.
Oh, Town Hall,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably good
That was
then,
our
too.
third.
Hard copy of the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah, ours does here currently at the town hall. I mean, these two, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say
Well,
that.
that's maybe because, I don't know why. Never mind.
School, website, Town Hall, anything else then is auxiliary.
Okay.
Just after hours, call Chris, he'll have to answer. Anytime.
Chris's door, close to that Chris's door.
What's your address, Chris?
Who would care to move that?
I move what we just said.
Okay. Colin moved to identify our locations as schools, website, and town halls. All those, or any further discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Affirm choice of attorney.
Chris Leopold.
You making that a motion?
Yes.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Identify media sources. And this is our preferred choice for basically publications. Rutland Herald, I think, has been the preferred media choice.
Primary one, yep.
Yeah, primary. Any other media sources than the Rutland Herald? Okay. Not hearing anything, so I'll move that we identify the Rutland Herald as our media source. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Authorize the administration to request expend available grant funds from the Agency of Education as well as state and federal funds. Any discussion? If not, we'd take a motion to,
Like that motion.
by Meredith. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously, and authorize the board chair to sign director's orders and other documents on behalf of the board as necessary.
So moved.
All right, motion by Colin. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. All right,
Eric, I know that was not on there, but did we want to continue with the communication committee or any committee work? Point that. It was not listed on this, but I know that that was a committee that was formed last year. I just wanted, if the board would like to continue, this would be the time to reestablish that.
okay.
I would move to continue with that and stay, are all the members still, or no?
Yep, we are.
Sure. Then stay with the same members.
Okay.
It's rigorous meeting schedule.
When's your next meeting?
Can we just state who the members are for?
I know, I'm
for
just
the
kidding.
record?
All right, so Colin,
Eric?
Eric Heyer,
Yeah.
Mike,
and then Mike.
like Tim was on.
Mike is not on the SU board. Okay.
Oh, he's not?
That's right, Mike was on there. Amanda?
Do we need to identify committee roles at reorganization as well, like we discussed at Wellsprings, or because it's already in place, it doesn't need to be re-discussed?
It's already in place, we don't need to discuss that committee. Right now, we're just deciding if we want to continue the communication committee and basically establish who's on that committee. So would anyone else care to join the communication committee?
We'll recruit throughout the year.
Well,
Right up my alley.
I think it would be good to identify someone who would at least, I don't know.
I think I participated in all meetings, so I can stay on.
Here we go.
Jim? All
We
right,
got one.
perfect. Okay, would someone care to make a motion to this?
I'll make a motion, we continue the communications committee with me, Eric, and Tim, and anyone else who wants to join throughout the year.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right,
A quick question.
of course.
That stepped out. Did we talk about legal counsel?
Yeah.
A question, Chris, or maybe it's not as well. Not, and I'm not anticipating this, but each local board hires Leopold, as do we. What if there's a conflict that arises? What does he do? Let's just say a local board decides to take action against the SU board. We both have the same lawyer. More of a
Then we'd
question.
have to hire, that board have to hire a separate attorney to represent them.
I'm not anticipating.
Right,
this,
but
but
that
I'm
would,
just-
that's,
it's more of
that.
I was thinking that when we did
I
it
believe
around
that local
town.
board would have to expend their funds to hire representation, because at the end, Chris would represent the SU or the greater good, so
Yeah.
if someone's going to sue,
Yeah, I'm not, again,
or,
just more
yeah,
conflict of interest.
yep. Good way to start the reorg, so.
Shots
Start
fired.
with the hard questions first.
No, but I was
More
just
questions than answers now.
I was just thinking that out loud when.
Okay. Going to get a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Eric H. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. General public comment, is there anyone tonight who wants to speak? All right. Not hearing any, we'll move on to staff and student highlights. That's Rutland. Oh, cool.
I gotta find it real quick. Yep.
So, good evening, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jay Slanker. I serve as the principal over at West Rutland. I'm finishing up my 33rd year here in Rutland County as an educator, starting at the old Rutland High down on Library Avenue, and as a parent educator, and working my way through as a special educator and social studies teacher, department head, assistant principal, and now I'm finishing up my 6th year here at West Rutland. Absolutely love my job most days, but I am here to highlight all the great things that are going on at West Rutland School for those of you that are not familiar with our school. So Chris, you can turn it to the, so I don't have a ton of slides. Most of this is me extemporaneously speaking, but I wanted to highlight, we talk about our K-12-ness, and this is unique. I'm a big school guy, went to a public school, several thousand, worked my way to Rutland High, which was around 1,100, 1,200, and now I'm down to 350. I absolutely love my time there, and I think people are amazed when we start talking about all the things that we do at a K-12 school. So I'm not going to read all of these, but we have a run club, a book club, a drama club, jazz band, marching band. Most folks have come to our coffee houses before, which are over at the town hall. That is a packed audience. We usually do one in the fall and one in the spring. The last couple of years, we have actually started student council, which was something that had been somewhere along the way fell by the wayside. So one of my goals was to increase student voice, and so we're now in our 3rd year of student council. And we also were able to reactivate our PTO, which was also something that had also fallen by the wayside. And so we're now in I believe our 2nd or 3rd year of having a very active PTO. And we do a really good job trying to, especially in a small school, trying to balance the students who are wanting to participate in more than one activity. So we get very creative. There are clubs that meet at all different hours, before school, after school, around practices. We have students that participate over at the drama club over at Proctor High School. We have students who are getting ready for a one-act festival down at Mill River this weekend. We try to figure out the schedule. I'll come in on a Saturday or Sunday, and I'm not sure who's going to be there some days, but there's always something going on. And our kids are the benefactors of that. Tomorrow night, we're expecting between 800 and 1,000 people tomorrow night for the Night of Shining Stars, 5:30 to 7. And this is a wonderful celebration of all the things that we do at West Rutland. Every single classroom will have an area where they're displaying their work. They're all connected to priority indicators and state standards. This year we reached out to our community members. West Rutland Town Hall is going to be there doing a voter registration and dog licenses. Fire department's going to be there handing out smoke detectors and CO2 detectors. We have the West Rutland Historical Society coming, and they're going to be doing presentations. We have just an enormous amount on the docket for tomorrow night. So if you see lots and lots of traffic, if you're coming through town, I'm sure we're going to be blocking most streets and probably part of Main Street. So, but it only happens once a year, and it's just a great celebration. We've got interactive science experiments, interactive sports experiences. We've got music performances. We have the drama club is going to be there in full costume and in character, walking through, trying to drum up, having folks come to the One Act Festival. So just a really cool night tomorrow night. Relating back to our building goals, I've always led buildings where our building goals should support the district goals. So we have been doing a ton of work around the strategic plan and what we call the look-fors, something that Superintendent Sell has asked us, all the buildings, to do. What are we doing and what does this look like when we come into a classroom? So the teachers have been doing a ton of work on this, mostly at the secondary level, because the elementary folks have been working on some other things that I'll get into. I'm very active in the MTSS, the multi-tiered system of support That is part of our academic success, where we're looking at individual student growth, but also growth of cohorts. And we have been doing a ton of work around progress monitoring. Every Tuesday, we have a 2-hour morning meeting for K to 6, where we're looking at supporting students who might be struggling in classrooms. And in the afternoon, I do an hour to an hour and a half secondary MTSS meeting. Again, part of our K-12ness, we get busy. Our other goals are around school climate and trying to increase student rigor. We have been doing a lot of work around writing across the curriculum, again, mostly at the secondary level. And also student engagement and community investment. We wouldn't have our school if it wasn't for the support of the West Rutland and the Quarry Valley and the GRCSU. We really do, of all the schools I've ever been in, West Rutland, the town, supports the school and comes out for everything. You know, it's just not, I know people know us for the sports, but there's so much more to our school than that. The same people you see at a sports event are also coming to the coffee house. They're also coming to Night of the Shining Stars, and you don't get that everywhere. And it's just a wonderful thing. So we have aligned our goals to what the SU and the district has asked us to do as well. Chris, you can go to the next slide. Oh, and before you go, this year we asked the staff. We always have done grades 7 through 12 awards. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, what is there for the students? So we asked our faculty. And they wanted to do character awards, similar to what you see at some of the other schools across our SU. So these were our winners, K to 12 or K to 6. We are doing 4 of these throughout the year. And this was our second one. We actually have the National Honor Society students hand out the awards and actually help lead the awards. So kids are, I believe last month was around respect. We've done responsibility. Oh, actually we did honesty. And this next one, which is coming up next month, is actually going to be the respect one. And then we'll have one more around cooperation at the end of the year. And those align themselves with NHS also character traits. There are 6 for NHS. We picked 4, and they've been hit so far. As I mentioned, what does our building goals look like in practice? I mentioned already our EST meetings, working with our classroom teachers, and those are ongoing. We have been doing a lot of work at the K-6 level around what I call horizontal alignment. We have 2 teachers at most grade levels, and while I don't want to see a carbon copy of what I see in each classroom, we need to have some consistency across. You know, we've been doing a ton of work at the in-services around having common assessments at each grade level across the entire SU. We're also trying to look at this at the micro level within our own building. So if I walk into one second grade classroom and I go into another second grade classroom, again, I don't expect the same exact thing, but we should be sharing resources, we should be sharing assessments, we should be looking, students should get a consistent experience regardless of which teacher that they have. So we've been spending a lot of time this year on that. We're about to work in the next couple of months, over the next couple of months, getting ready for the new Bridges program, which is math at the K-6 or K-5 level. And we're going to be doing a ton of work around that, also around that horizontal alignment, along with vertical. Lisa's actually led us in a lot of work around grades 6, 7, and 8 math. And we're looking forward to continuing that work because those teachers use a similar program. So we want to make sure that we, again, students have consistent experiences regardless of the classroom that they're in. One of the things that's near and dear to my heart is a program you might not be familiar with. It's called Everybody Wins. It's based out of Montpelier. It is a mentor program based through literacy. So we have community members that come in. They give up their lunchtime. Many are retired, but many are also working at different area employers, such as GE and Rutland Regional Medical Center. And they come in and they spend an hour having lunch and reading to students who are identified as needing some help with a mentor, but also need help with their literacy. So it's a great program. I had it in my last building when I was a principal in Rutland, and I was able to bring that program to West Rutland. It's a nominal cost with a big yield. And we celebrate with a literacy night, and they too will be at the Night of the Shining Stars tomorrow night. They're coming down from Montpelier for this event. Last year they gave away a book to every K-6 student in the building. So they're just really, really good folks to work with. We also spent a lot of time, as folks, as staff come in and out, buildings morph. So a couple years ago when we needed a new library technology person, Deanna Rodolfi, one of our teachers at the time, went out and got her certification to become a library media specialist. And she has brought with her a lot of energy around STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And we are doing a lot of what I call low-tech STEM. You won't walk in and see a 3D printer going, okay? Even though we have students that do a ton of 3D printing on their own. We're doing things with cardboard. We're doing things, they're doing all sorts of technology. They're learning we do our own version of Shark Tank, where the students have to create a product, they have to pitch it, they have to be able to then create it using some of the technology that we have. And it's really cool. Deanna does 2 or 3 of them a year. So it doesn't cost a lot of money, but we're doing it. Deanna has also redone that STEM space with a green wall where we do YouTube announcements every single day, and they're available on the West Rutland YouTube channel. So parents and grandparents can see exactly what's going on in our building. We had also tried some podcasting. We had great energy, and then we kind of dropped off. So it's something that I'd love to see some more podcasts from our students. We just haven't gotten there. We also redid our whole K-6 library and made a dedicated space. Sometimes having the little ones with the high school ones, we like to have a little separation. So we were able to really create a wonderful space in an underused area. If you're familiar with West Rutland's library, somewhere along the way a wall went up. It had been one big open room and a wall came up. We ended up putting a doorway through, so there's 2 exits and 2 entrances into it, and we made it a really fun space for the elementary classes to come into. And that's a credit to Deanna, thinking outside the box. What else do we need for our students? So we can have a high school group in one side of the library and a K-6 on the other side, and it works. It really does work well. Chris, if you could go to the next slide. Almost done. So what do our goals look like? What does this actually look like when it comes to school climate? We do a spring carnival. We used to do a winter carnival. We've moved it to the spring. Winter is too chaotic with sports. We have classroom reading buddies. I see a couple of our teachers are on this call, and we have students who actually go and read. The benefit of a K-12 building is when students, we don't have study halls per se. If a student has a free block, they go work in a classroom. And they are helping us with reading, they're helping us with formative assessments, they're helping us with classroom, helping the kids work through classroom work. And you can do that in a K-12 building seamlessly. So instead of just sitting in a study hall, they're actually in classrooms. So very, very cool. Mr. Harrington does a really good job with doing pep rallies. We do dances. We have done a ton of field trips, Wonder Feet, Hildene, Calvin Coolidge, Billings Farm, the Echo Center. This year we have a Battle of the Books going on, and we're also, we also do quite a few field trips over to Proctor High School and Proctor Elementary. They've always been very generous about opening it up to the other Quarry Valley schools. Rutland Town, hey, come on over, we're doing this presentation. So the students at April 1st are going to go over to Proctor Elementary and see Aquaman. He's bringing all sorts of amphibians in. So Mrs. Colty's invited us to come over there. You know, it's so much easier and so less intrusive to have these close field trips or bring folks into our buildings. So And then community engagement. Our National Honor Society does a food drive every fall. And this year, we actually also, this was another thing that we started up, we have partnered with the West Rutland Food Shelf, and we have done very seamlessly with the help of Mrs. Knott, our school counselor. We have students who get bags of food on Fridays. We've identified it and worked with families to make sure that they have food for the weekend to sustain them through until we see them again on Monday. And Mrs. Knott does that for us. We have our daily announcements, as I mentioned. We've also done a ton of work, and this is across all 3 Quarry Valley schools. We call them the Career Cafes. We do Career for a Year, where we bring in employers from around Rutland County. We just did an educator night, or an educator themed, but we brought in everybody from the National Guard and the Army recruiters to architects to engineers from Naylor and Breen, Casella Waste Management, Casella Construction, come in and they love meeting our students. And our students are like, wait a second, I can do this right out of school. Or if I want to pursue this, I can go to college and then jump in to a career. And they're realizing these are Rutland folks, or a lot of them are Rutland folks, but they're all Rutland area employers who are desperate for folks. So trying to keep kids in Vermont. Mr. Berman, one of our special educators, has just run with this, along with Mrs. Loisel, our guidance counselor. We also, along with all 3 Quarry Valley schools, do what's called Women at Work. It's held up at VTC, I believe, usually in the fall. And women, our students, our young ladies, go up there and they learn about, from other ladies, what are jobs that are out there. Running heavy equipment, to being a nurse, to everything in between. And it's a wonderful event that is sponsored each year that we always attend. We also have partnered with the help of Lisa with a group called Up for Learning, which is about student voice and choice. They're in a lot of our schools across the SU. They helped us get our student council up and running. Next month, next month, they're going to be also working with student council on unpacking the youth risk survey. And this is really a great way for students to have their voice be heard in school and create an action plan when they get done with it. So the Up for Learning folks, it's instrumental with having more student voice in our school. And music performances. We played for the governor's inauguration. If you remember correctly, last spring, we won the Music Drives Us Ernie Bach New England Subaru Award. We were one of many schools across the state, but Ernie Bach actually came to our school and our students performed music for him. And the governor was there and he liked us so much, he said, I'd like you at my inauguration. So that was a great accolade for our students to go up and play at his inauguration back on, I think, January 19th. But we also participate in the West Rutland Block Party, the Halloween Parade in Rutland. We do the West Rutland Tree Lighting Ceremony, Memorial Day. We're going to be up at the Burlington Jazz Festival. We just got done with districts over at Rutland at the old high school. So there's always things going on. As I mentioned earlier, we have students who have worked in 3 different art shows right now. So, and this is not just unique to West Rutland, but there are things that are across all of our Quarry Valley schools. And Chris, the last slide. Again, we pride ourselves being this little K-12 school. 350 kids, there's only about 5 left in the state. We are student-centered. We definitely are rooted in traditions. And the K-12, it lends itself. We have a crazy schedule because we have teachers that are teaching elementary specials who are also teaching high school specials. We're sharing space with the cafeteria / gym. We have the regular gym. There are always, it is quite the scheduling process that many of us help do behind the scenes. And every day we sit there and say, okay, are we meeting the needs of our students? Are we meeting up to the expectations? Just like a lot of our schools in the GRCSU, there's a lot of pride in what we do. And so I still say this. I've been at West Rutland now, as I mentioned, 6 years. I love coming to work. I really do. It's a great place to work. We have a great faculty. We have wonderful students. We have wonderful community support. If we need something, we pick up the phone, and the Legion is going to be right there to help us, or the Town Hall is going to be right there to help us. So it is a wonderful gem of a school, and I'm really proud to be the leader of it. So is there any questions I can answer for you?
No, very impressive. Thank you, Jay.
Super.
Sounds like there's some really good things going on in West Rutland.
Yeah, we always, our doors are always well open, so come on, well, once you get past the buzzer. So, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
All right. Move on to the consent agenda. We get an approval for minutes from February 4th.
So moved.
Motion by Lisa. Any amendments to the minutes? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have warrants. Which warrants did we have? Warrant 417, 419, 421. For approval.
So moved.
Motion by Colin. Any discussion, questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Superintendent's report.
Thanks, Eric. I'll be real quick, 'cause I know you've all heard this at local board meetings. There are two items I just want to bring to your attention, to just remind you of. Tomorrow night, we do have a carousel meeting. It is important that we have all members in attendance. We do need a quorum. The purpose of this meeting is to ratify the GRCSU, GRCEA Support Staff Master Agreement. So, you know, I will be here in person, but for those that cannot, there will also be a virtual option as well. But the way this will work is we'll open the meeting up, and then we'll just go board to board, and they'll just, you know, make a motion, and then they will vote on the master agreement to ratify, and then they'll adjourn to the next board, and then finally at the end, the GRCSU board will be. So that's one thing I just want to remind is, don't log off, stay on till the very end, because we had that problem in the past where people log off. We didn't have a quorum at the GRCSU, so we had to quickly invite people back. So until the GRCSU logs us off, or, you know, shuts down, then they'll be good. Jeff, do you have something you want to add, or could you unmute? Oh, okay. And then the other item was just around the budget communication survey, that once we have final approval for all local boards, we will be getting that out to our stakeholders, communities, end of April. And that's just, you all have seen that, it's been in your local board folders, but we will have opportunity for feedback at our local board meetings. But once we have that, then our goal will be to get that out, kind of put a final bow on the budget season. And as we all know, we are thankful all of our budgets passed this year. So once again, thank you to all of our communities and the GRCSU for supporting our students and our schools and our staff members. So thank you.
Any questions?
I just have one question, not necessarily related to your report, but just watching how things are changing. And I'll just say more directly, I see it personally now coming through for Department of Libraries, Museum and Library Institutes. And I know, and I'm not sure if it's happened in Vermont, but I see in other states that, particularly at this level, if a contract is, let's say, 50% grant funded, 50% local funded, contracts are being written that if the grant funding is lost, that your job reduces to the 50% or 0.5 of local funding. And I know we have several grant funded positions, and I'm just wondering if we have talked about that, thought about that, or there's any consideration of incorporating that as contracts are going out here in another month.
So, at the April board meetings, Louis and myself will have information for all local boards around positions which are grant funded, just so you have an idea of what sort of impact it might have, and then we'll also do that at the GRCSU level. I have a call tomorrow with Chris Leopold, and I will ask him that question. I'll have that answer for you at the April 1st GRCSU board meeting around if we can redraft contracts to take that into account, that if we would lose funding, because we do have, some of our interventionists, some of our positions are partially grant funded. If we would lose that funding, what would happen? Now, some we're stuck with a .4 position, because .6 of that would be out of the end of that. So would there be a way for us to
Yeah, and it's certainly not to reduce staffing, but, I mean, it can also handcuff us, because we certainly haven't budgeted for,
Well, I think that's one of the things that, it's not just our boards and our.
oh, no. It's
goes
being
across.
talked about on multiple levels.
Right, but I think that's from a state level, and I know Lisa and Lewis could talk more about this, but that has been one of the ways that we have been able to try to keep costs down, is that we have, utilized grant funds.
Sure.
Both, like I said, state and federal. And if we were to lose those, we would really have to rethink staffing, what that looks like, and the impacts of programming, the things like that. So, so it is something which we do keep a close eye on, but at the local boards, we will talk more about the impacts, and then I know April 1st board meeting for GRCSU, we'll start that off just with more, because I think there are more SU level positions right now grant funded than local, correct, Lisa and Lewis? Yes, okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah, so.
Just like to make a note that the main objective of the communications committee was to help us all pass our budgets, which we did in the first round, so. Saying.
Did a great job. Okay, any other questions for Superintendent? All right, we'll move on to the Assistant Superintendent's report.
Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna hold on as long as I can.
Oh, no.
I know, right? 'Tis the season. You have my regular monthly report. I don't think that there was anything specifically new or exciting in there, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has with that before we move on to data presentations, if people.
I don't hear any questions, so anything that'll help your voice, I guess.
Great. So Chris, do you mind
Which-
doing
are
up
we doing FastBridge?
FastBridge?
Okay.
What, it's just first on the agenda.
So tell me when to.
So this is one you are all, or most of you, should be very familiar with because it is the same formatting and reporting that we go through 3 times a year when we administer our screeners. So this is our winter screener results, and we just have the overview information in the beginning that explains what the screeners are and how they're formatted, and the next slide has the information about what the percentiles mean, the different tests, what they measure, and then we go right into our literacy data, and there's an overview slide that shows which assessments we give for literacy, and we have 4 core literacy assessments that we give. Different grade levels take different assessments. So we start with early reading for our youngest readers. Then we move on to CBM English and A reading, and then auto reading. And those are the 4. And you'll see those in our charts. And so we, our goals, our superintendent's goals for the year are focused on growth, because we can't control where students come in, but we can control what happens once they're in our classrooms and once we start working with them during the year. And so that's why we focus on growth from fall to spring. So this is kind of our halfway check-in point on how we're doing. So we have the growth scores and the growth reports first. And so these show how students are doing growth-wise at this point in the year. And so early reading is first, and you can see on the left-hand side, you see the percentage, and below the chart is the number of students total, and this is across the supervisory union for all students in K and 1. what percentage and what number of students were in each risk category, so high risk, some risk, low risk, or advanced in the fall and in the winter for each of those categories. And then on the right-hand chart, you see what percentage and what number of students made flat growth, modest growth, typical growth, or aggressive growth from fall to winter. And again, sort of very simplistically, we want more kids over in the dark purple and light purple, and less kids over in the light pink and dark pink. And that's always what we're going for, because that means that they are growing really fast. They're making great progress. They're moving really quickly in their growth. And we see in early reading that that is definitely the case. We are moving more kids quickly through their content, which is where we want to be. So more than half of our kids are making typical or aggressive growth. That's great. And we've worked a lot with early reading, as you've heard in all of our meetings in the last few years, around the programs that we've been putting in place, Literacy Block, UFly, Haggerty, all the work that our teachers have been doing in that area. So that's exciting to see. CBM reading, this is grades 2 and 3. So same kind of reporting format. On the left-hand side, you see the percentage and number of students in their risk categories, fall to winter. And on the right-hand side, we see growth. So slower here, and this is the trend that we're watching, and I'm giving away all my data analysis, so you will be able to move right through those slides when we get to the end. But we're looking at fluency. It's an area that we're focused on, and there's sort of 5 components of reading that we talk about and that research says we need to really help students develop. So phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And the pieces that we've been working on so far in our early literacy program are really around phonemic awareness and phonics. And so it makes perfect sense to us that next is fluency, and that's the next area we need to work on. And this data shows us that that's correct. That's the next area we need to work on, because we're moving students, but we're not moving them quite as fast as we want to in this 2nd and 3rd grade band. So UFly next year, 2nd grade, picks it up. So that will be the next area that they'll expand that program into that grade level. And there are also fluency passages that go along with that program, and they'll be embedding that into the work that they're doing, and decodable passages. So we'll be watching that implementation carefully, and we're also looking at how we can continue to deepen some fluency practices there, because this test is showing us we need to do some additional push in that area for this age group. To really see that growth that we want to see. So auto reading, 4 to 9. Our students are already doing pretty well in this area, and this is one, and I know we've talked about this before too, but when you have a really high percentage of students that are already doing pretty well, like, it's very hard to push them higher, because they're already starting out pretty high. So in this case, we're in the 60% of our students are already low risk in this category to begin. And auto reading is that can they lift the words off the page? Do they have pretty good like decoding, fluency? They can get through text, and in grades 4 through 9, there's pretty good performance there and pretty good growth there too. But that's the sort of foundational reading skill at that level. And then this is A reading, so this gets to overall reading, so it's a little bit more complex skill set. So this is where we get into a measure that's a little bit more predictive of the kinds of putting it all together that we want to see with comprehension, more predictive of what we might see in actual complex text when they're reading for classes, when they're reading for VTCAP, when they're reading for content comprehension. So, and we see, again, steady growth here. But this is a really big area of focus that we're working on at the secondary level with reading and writing across content areas, and working on all the curriculum work that we're doing around common formative assessments, around sequencing, and around trying to help our teachers really get into the VTCAP practice tests and the formative assessments that are available from the state, so that they can see what students are being asked to actually do, and they can look at their own assessments and make sure that the level of challenge that we're providing for students is preparing them for the level of challenge that is aligned with the Common Core, and that we're really being reflective about that work. So this measure kind of tells us how we're doing on that, and we're making some progress. We have, again, a little bit of work still to do in that area. And then we move into math. These are the math measures, just 2 primary math assessments that we see: early and then older students. And our early math for K and 1. On the next slide, we see a very strong performance for our students in foundational skills, which is really exciting. Our teachers have been working so hard on hands-on math for our youngest learners, and the growth you can see is also very, very strong for students in K and 1 in math, which is, again, exciting. And then A math here, and this is 2nd through 9th grade, so this is a huge group of kids here and very general data. But again, strong performance with growth. We're almost at 60% of our students making typical or aggressive growth. So their risk levels are a little higher here. Our math scores overall are not as high as our literacy scores, but our growth is at 60% of our kids are making typical or aggressive growth. So our teachers are closing that gap at a higher rate in math. So they're working really hard to try to make that happen, and hopefully Bridges next year at the K-5 level is going to help them do that. Be a great resource. So, and some of our schools have already had that, but now all of our elementary schools will have that, and we'll help them to do that. So I think I gave you all of these highlights already, but I know we talk about this every time we talk about data, but I just keep saying it because the small student cohorts, it's very hard. You could see our data here could be, there was one chart, I didn't point it out, I should have, but like there was one chart that you can see, it's like on one column, it's like 20% and it says 42 kids, and the next column is 20% and it says 31 kids, and like as I was doing the numbers, I was like, oh, I should circle this for them so that they can see, but it's like when you have small cohorts like this, it's the numbers sometimes, it's really hard. You can have these big swings, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a swing in student performance. It just can mean a change in cohort size or a change in the actual cohort. And you guys know that because you're dealing with, you get your school level data at the local level, which is even more cohort specific, and you see it in all your local reports, and I know your principals do a great job of explaining that to you too, but I just always caution that these are small sample sizes, so we can see swings in data one way or the other, and they don't necessarily mean the sky is falling. We just have to be thoughtful about our interpretation of them and really dig deeply into the numbers behind it, to be thoughtful in our analysis because of our school sizes being so small. For us, 82% on average across, if you average all of these measures out, 82% of our students are making modest to aggressive growth across all of these measures, which is great. Like that's really where we want our kids to be making growth and grow, and that's the whole point. We're moving kids. That's what we want to see. We want, sure, 82%, that still means that there's almost 20% that are not, so that we're not going to rest on our laurels and say that that's enough when we never stop. We're teachers, right? But we're still, that's a lot of progress. So that's a good start. We're going to keep going, chipping away at that 18%. And the next steps that we shared in the fall, I mean, you know what our plans are for this year. They're aligned with our strategic plan, the work that we're doing, MTSS implementation, many of the things that Jay shared about supporting our teachers and training for them, curriculum work that we're doing, implementation of programs and resource support so that we have consistency and accessible resources for all of our teachers, and sharing of resources across schools and buildings, to try to build the capacity of everyone. So your new teacher who just walked in the door can learn, you know, as much as possible from the veteran teacher who's teaching the same thing down the hall and can really help each other as much as possible. And Jay talked about Algebra 1 too, and the middle school math work that we're doing of not just, you know, making sure that kids are on level, but also creating opportunities to go above level when we have students who are ready, and creating opportunities for accelerated learning and advanced studies, and how do we challenge students to keep going above and beyond, and the common formative assessment work so that we know when they're ready for that challenge. And then just the end of your slides, always, I know some people like to look at the proficiency level screening results, so I just put those in for informational. If anybody wants to look at them that way, they're there for you.
Lisa, when you mentioned the small class size, what's really nice about that is that the teachers really get to know their students. And could you talk a moment about how the intervention has helped those kids with the MTSS program, which is student support, for those kids that show they're struggling for whatever reason? I think the data is so useful, because then you can narrow down who is really struggling and what can we do for them.
Absolutely. I think the early reading and the early math, like, because you just have 2 grade levels pulled out, it's really easy to see the impact of intervention specifically in that grade, in those scores, right? Like, if all the other tests, you could just take 2 grade levels at a time and look at them, I think you'd see similar slices. But, you know, that's really where our teachers are using this information all the time, and our EST teams are meeting every single week on students and making sure that if there's a student who is identified and they're struggling, like, the interventionist is meeting with them, the teacher is working with them, and they're targeting it. I mean, we have one school, when they pulled their winter data, they had 3 students in the K1 band that were not at benchmark and in the winter, and that was not, they had 27 in the fall, you know, and that was teams of teachers chipping away at skills and building skills and working with kids in intervention cycles and drills and practice and small group work, you know, and then by the middle they get to 3, you know, and that's like so exciting to get to those places. So this is definitely the data that they're using to help them identify students, target small group work, and track whether or not students are making progress. And this software, it's, you know, we talked about it when we switched over to it, like, it's not as pretty or as nice for big reports like this, but it's really nice for teachers and interventionists who are working with kids all the time. The reports are really helpful for them.
I mean, it just makes the data useful. It's not just numbers. You're not just a number. There's something we're going to do for you. Or, on the other hand, kids that are excelling, you know, there could be built-in challenges too, so.
Chris and I just had a meeting with a family about that the other day.
Yeah.
Using the same data to help design a plan for that.
Okay, before we move on to VTCAP, are there any other questions on the FastBridge? All right. Thank you.
Okay. So number 2. So this one is exciting. So this is brand new. So we have not, I don't think, no, I know we haven't. We have not looked at VTCAP data together because we didn't have anything to look at before. And they just released the embargo recently on last year's results. And the year before, we didn't have anything to compare them to. And they gave us access to the testing platform like 4 minutes before the test. So this is really like the first time we've had data to look at. And it's pretty exciting. So there's a lot of information in these slides. I'm not going to go through all of it, but if you have a minute, or if you're trying to really understand the test and how all of it works, or if you, like, as we get more layers, like, I think we'll come back to some of this presentation over time. But I really just tried to build in kind of like some background educational material for folks on like what is the VTCAP test, how is the test designed, how is it formatted, how are the questions set up, how are they scored, how are they designed, because it is a brand new test for our state. And as a board, you have not really looked at data from this test or the formatting of this test before. So just to help with you understanding what it is that we're looking at, or if you're getting questions from community members, you can hopefully refer back to this document and get information that you need, or call me anytime, and I'm happy to talk you through it too. But we have, it is very similar to SBAC in some ways, in that it's testing the same content areas and the same grade levels. So ELA, math, and science, primarily it's grades 3 through 9 for ELA and math, grades 5, 8, and 11 for science, and that is the same as SBAC. It's aligned with the Common Core and the Next Generation Science Standards, which is the same as SBAC. And it is administered once in the year in the spring, so same as SBAC. The test window has been a little different. It was different last year than it is this year. We're not really sure what it's going to wind up being over time, but there's an example for you of this year. It was March 10th to April 25th. That's a little bit earlier than SBAC used to be, which may make a difference over time, just because, of course, if you're testing kids in the middle of April, you expect them to know a certain amount of information, as opposed to if you're testing them in the middle of March. So we'll see what ends up happening. Again, it's been different 2 years in a row. And the AOE, on the next slide, Chris, the AOE is still doing the annual snapshot tool. For those of you, and I know I've come and presented on that in the past also, but they are sharing VTCAP results through the annual snapshot tool, similar to how they did the SBAC tool. That tool is available to the public. I have linked the website on up here. It is a very densely populated tool with lots of layers of navigation. That one does not lead itself well to slides. It is one that is much more interactive. You need to like click in multiple layers and click out multiple layers. So if there is any interest at any point in time, I'm happy to present that, but it would be better as a live demo than a slide deck, just because it's like everything you have to like expand and then go back out and expand and go back out. It's not static. It's not meant to be viewed as static images. It's meant to be viewed where you like dive deep into something and then come back out of it. But it is something that's interesting to go look at and play with, and it's much more visual. They've got like arrows and things. Again, there's 2 years of data in there, really one. So I don't think that there's a whole lot of longitudinal information in it this time that's very valuable, because we've taken it we have 1 year of data to compare, but maybe over time, similar to SBAC, it might be something that can show us trends or patterns in a visual way. Vermont does have confidentiality requirements on data, which is that if there's any group of students where there are fewer than 11 students in a category, then that data is kept confidential. And so if you do go on the snapshot, you will see areas that are like, it's blank, like there's no data available. And that's to protect the confidentiality of students, especially in some of our smaller schools. One of the benefits of us looking at data at the SU level is that we have not had very many categories that is true for us at this point. And so that's nice that we can actually look at the data, and most of our data were more than 11 students in grades across the SU, so not a problem. We get access to the data much earlier than the public does for obvious reasons. Like, we don't get it right away. I wish we did, but we get it in the fall, usually. And we have shared with the AOE that it would be much more helpful to us if we got it even earlier than that. In other states where I've worked, we had access to it almost immediately after testing. I know in Massachusetts, where I used to work, we had it before school was out, and we could start analysis on it immediately, which was very helpful. We also don't get access to any of the test questions or the student answers in Vermont. Which is different than some states, and we have shared with the AOE that it would be very helpful to us if we did. In Massachusetts, there were some questions you couldn't see because the test manufacturer was like trying out those questions and they were keeping them confidential, but it was 5 or 6 questions and a test. You got everything else. You got the question, the answer choices, the student answers to those questions, which ones they chose, which standard it was aligned to, which standard they thought it was aligned to, I should say, because we didn't always agree, but like your team could really dive into that test and look at your curriculum and look at your students and how they responded to it and dive deep. We don't have that level of access in Vermont. We really only have like a very broad information that we get back, and so it's at this point in time, but we have shared with the superintendents, and all the curriculum directors have shared with the agency that we would really appreciate it if at some point in the future they could try to get us that level of access, because it would make this data far more useful to us in really analyzing our curriculum and our instruction and changing that to better prepare our students and make sure that we're not teaching to the test, because that's not what we want to do, but that we have provided our students with an opportunity to learn and master the skills that are considered by the field to be the most important at the level of challenge that is appropriate for the standard. So that's something that we've shared our feedback on.
Lisa, did you want to share also about the alignment of assessments, particularly around Webb's depth of knowledge and the importance of, because that's a key piece, because you say we're not necessarily teaching the test, but if we had a better understanding in terms of, I'll let you, if
Sure.
you want, so.
Yes, so I mean, there is a blueprint available. They call it a test specifications document, but they basically, they'll say like, here's the test, and Webb's depth of knowledge that Chris is referring to, they'll say like, okay, here are the standards, and here's the level of difficulty, 1, 2, 3, 4, that you should be teaching to in order for your students to be considered proficient in this standard on this test. And so that there's it at the very broad level, like very, very broad level. But when we get the data back, we can't do the backwards comparison to see what level our students actually performed at.
And so why this is critical, and we discussed this back in New Jersey and other states as well, is that the VTCAP might be assessing at, say, a level 2 or level 3. Our teachers might be doing a really nice job, but they're assessing at, say, a level 1 or level 4. And so therefore, if our teachers are doing assessing at, say, level 1 and a level 3, and they like our kids, they have a mastery of this, they should do well in this, but then when they go to the VTCAP's assessing at a level 2, there's a disconnect. And so I think having us better understand at what level that's, the VTCAP is going to assess at allows us to better align our assessments so that we get a better indicator in terms of student success. So if we know that they're going to align at, say, a level 3 or level 4, and that doesn't mean like rigor of us, but it allows us then to develop, formative and summative assessments at levels 3 and level 4, which give us a better understanding as we're working with our students, areas of success, areas of struggle, and we can then adjust our curriculum. And so that's why this is a key piece that other states have allowed, because if these assessments are going to be informative and we're going to use this data, we need information like this to give back to the teachers so they can, really take this assessment and say, all right, it's going to inform our curriculum and instruction and adjust. But, sorry, I do think it's important to note because, like I said, in Massachusetts and New Jersey, other states have allowed for that, level of detail that has allowed educators to better align learning with the standards. So sorry.
Yep. And hopefully it will come. And there are some tools that are available to teachers that give them pieces of this information. We did not have access to those tools last year. We only just got access to those tools this year. One is the formative assessment bank that Cognia has provided. They don't have formative assessments for all of the grade levels and content areas yet, but the bank is building. They also have a practice test available. Their system doesn't score that, and it doesn't allow this teacher to see the student responses yet, but we hope that eventually it will. So those are pieces that SBAC had in place, but again, SBAC built that over time as they had that system rolled out. So we hope that over time, those pieces will also become available to our teachers, because those would be the kinds of things that really help them as teachers to see how students interact with this material, see that material compared to their curriculum materials, their assessments, and really start to be able to be reflective and help those things be aligned. And so we're missing a couple pieces at this point in time that help us put those together, but we're hoping that the state will continue to work with us and collaborate with us to make those tools available to our teachers as we move forward. The next slide is about scale scores. So this is how student scores are reported out. Student scores are reported out in two ways. One is a scale score and the other is a proficiency level. And so students get both. And this is just a descriptor of how scale scores are calculated. It's kind of like a comparison. If you think about a bell curve or a percentile rank, it's where does that student fall on that continuum? Is their scale score overall? And there's an example, but it's sort of statistically normed. So they think that it's predictive of approximately that student's performance against a range of items. And they do cut points in those scale scores to determine a proficiency level. So the next slide shows how those scaled scores ranges turn into proficiency levels for ELA, math, and science. So if a student scores within each of those ranges, that will become their designated proficiency level. This is all very technical, I'm sorry, but again, if you get a question, here's the slide deck, I'll share it with you. And all of this is available obviously on the VTCAP website and in all of their information from the state. So those performance levels, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the VTCAP test then gives a definition for each content area. So they say, okay, if a student scores a level 2 on this standard in English on the level 4 exam, this is what they can do. And they have the teachers, and they hired lots of teachers from all over the country to take the standards and basically turn it into a rubric and say, okay, so for this standard, if you're at a level 1, the student can do this. If you're at a level 2, the student can do this. If you're at a level 3, the student can do this. And if you're at level 4, the student can do this. So for each of their questions, they figured out how they would score that point value-wise, for both multiple choice, for constructed response, for open response, for essay. So they have their own back-end rubric that they're using to score that was developed in part by teachers from all across the country. So every item on their end. We have a copy of the performance level descriptors, not a copy of the questions, but a copy of the descriptors, so we can see the rubric that they're using for each of the standards, and that's available for teachers too. And the next slide. So this is an example of performance level descriptors for ELA. So like, what should a student be able to do if they are at level 4, level 3, level 2, level 1? And you can just kind of see like how the language changes: thorough understanding, satisfactory understanding, partial understanding, emerging understanding. And like, you can just see how that language shifts from each of the levels. And the same for math, very similar language, and the same for science. So after a student takes a test, their family receives an individual student report. And I put some links in here with some sample reports that the state provides, just if you don't have a student in the school at this time, just so you can see what they look like. But they get a variety of information. And Chris, do you mind just pop in? Can you? Will it open? Will the first one open?
Yeah,
for you?
individual.
Yeah.
Yep, it opens.
Oh, you probably have to pop out.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So, and then the family gets an interpretation guide too that helps to explain it to them. I think some of our schools mail these home because parents start calling and they're like, "Where's my kids' VTCAP scores? I know you have them." But a lot of our schools really like to hand these out at parent-teacher conferences in the fall, because then the teachers can explain it to the families and explain the report if they have any questions or answer them. But they're happy to do that at any point too. And so that's sort of just the overview that a family gets on their students' progress. And if they
Can
have,
this be emailed to parents or put in the portal?
it can be also, yes. But we are required to distribute a physical copy of it by the state. So at some point we have to do that anyway, either by mail or in person. And actually, parents get more information on their reports than we do, which is great. And the next slide. So these are the reporting categories. So within each content area, this is the level of depth we get back. So when I say Common Core, say there are, 40 standards in English language arts for 3rd grade, we don't get a report back, and parents don't get a report back on here's how my kid did on 40 standards. We get a report back on 3 reporting categories. Here's how the student did on literary text, here's how they did on informational text, and here's how they did on writing analysis and language convention. So their overall performance is kind of grouped in that big bucket of standards together. Now we know which standards go under those buckets, and could explain to families which standards go under those buckets, but they're grouped that way in the reports that come back. And on the right-hand side, you see science. It comes back physical sciences, life sciences, and earth and space sciences. So that's how it's grouped back together. And the next slide has math. Math is much more, those math folks, they always like to be different. So they have different grade spans, have different reporting categories, of course, because they like to, Linda knows I like to tease this, but they like to be different. So here's our data, which is, this shows, so on the left-hand side, so this is ELA test results. So last year, so this is now a whole year ago, because that's how old this data is at this point in time. So a year ago, 50% of our students scored level 3 or level 4, which is proficient or advanced, on ELA on the end of year test. And the average scaled score for that group was 1739. And the proficiency level was a 10% increase from the previous year. And the scaled score was a 16-point increase from the previous year. And on the right-hand side, you can see the breakdown of our 2023 scores to our 2024 scores. And so you can see the percentage of students and those colors. So the red is 1, the gray is 2, the light blue is 3, and the dark blue is level 4. So that's the percentage of our students overall as a supervisory union that scored at each of those levels from 2023 to 2024 for ELA. And then the next slide, which I know is very hard to see, and I'm very sorry about that, and I hope is easier when you can blow it up on your own screen. So that's by grade level. And so across the GRCSU, so you can blow it up on your computer. For ELA, you can see how many students were in each of those grade levels, what their average scaled score was, what percentage of them met the state standard, and what percentage and number of students were at each level in each of those grade levels for ELA for the GRCSU overall.
Do they intend to have state, like in that last slide, it says, state average is not available?
Yes, it's so the state put out their data in the fall, but for some reason it's not in their system. They published it in a press release, but it's not in the data.
Incorporated in the data.
It's not in their data system, so hopefully it will get into it and we'll be able to do the comparisons. It just hasn't trickled through yet. And I don't know when it is, but hopefully the next round we'll have it in there for comparison. And so this is math, and as we said, we know our math scores trickle behind our ELA a little bit. So we had 35% of our students were at level 3 or level 4 for math last year. And our average scaled score was 1708, and both of those were it was a 1% increase in the percentage of students who are level 3 or level 4, and a 1-point increase in scaled score from 2003 to 2004. And on the right-hand side, you see our performance from 2023 to 2024. And again, those are the 4 levels. And the next slide shows by grade level, and you can see the number of students, the scaled score, the percentage that meets the state standards in each of those grade levels, and the level and number, the percentage and number of students, at each of those levels across grades. And then these are our science test results. So 33% of our students were at level 3 or level 4, which is a 5% increase from the previous year. And our average scaled score across the 3 grades that take the science test was a 1731, which was an 8-point increase in scaled score. And you can see our data from 2023 to 2024. And the next slide shows that broken out by the 3, again, it's only the 3 grade levels that take the science assessment. So again, only having really 1 year that we can compare and 1 year of access to the state resources and information about this test. We saw proficiency increases in 12 out of 17 testing categories from 23 to 24, which I think really shows what our teachers will do with a little bit of information and a little bit of time to understand what is going to be expected of students and what's going to prepare, along with the work that we've been doing in our strategic plan and curriculum and all of the program work and professional development we've been doing. 12 out of 17 testing categories showing positive performance increases is significant. Our scores are fairly consistent with scores across the region and scores across the state at this time, which doesn't tell us very much other than it's a brand new test. So we're trying to figure it out, and we're right now at the starting point about the same place as most other people. Essay writing definitely stands out for us as a supervisory union. Our average across the SU is just under a 2.0, and it's overall, it's our lowest score area. And so that is definitely going to be an area of focus. I know you've heard some schools talking about writing already this year. You're going to hear all of us talking about it a lot more, because it is definitely an area where every single school needs to work with our students on writing, period. Science is already the next area of review up in our curriculum review adoption framework. If you remember that chart that we had that showed every year and what we were going to focus on. So that's the next natural progression, which we would do as a result of this data if we hadn't already planned it, but we already knew that that's where we needed to go next. So that's where we're going to go. And we already talked about data access and really what we need to make good use of this information for program and planning purposes. And I think I talked about all these things and what's available for our schools. And I'm happy. I know it's a lot of information, and it's a new, and I did just want to point out too, if you didn't see it already, I did put the state of Vermont VTCAP data at the end, just in 3 slides, and also a link to their press release, which went over their state level data and showed what other information that they wanted to share about Vermont state level data that they released earlier this fall, just so that you have that also available.
What are they doing with this data?
The Secretary of Education has included it in her state profile report that she has presented to the legislature, and also in the district profile reports that were prepared for the Listen and Learn tour and have been sort of repackaged in a variety of different reports that have been shared for various audiences, mostly legislative at this point, I think. Anything else that I missed in that?
I mean, writing hasn't changed substantially. I mean, we've been through multiple AOE secretaries, and we hear the same thing. I mean, I think we hear a lot of this and not a lot of change. I guess that it's disappointing to see that, and I think there's a lot of reasons writing has changed, and a lot of that had to do with when we have switched proficiencies and all of that, and in my opinion, that writing was not a high priority in all content areas, and so now this happens, and so then we go back and say, oh no, oh no, oh no. We've done it to ourselves.
Part of my question is that I don't think you have the answer, and I don't think they've accounted for it. Obviously, if you look at our middle school testing numbers start to jump and then they drop off. Some of our kids in the district are disappearing and going to different districts. Are we tracking those kids? They obviously they get to jump into a pool and get associated with, let's say, Rutland City in 9th grade, and they get pulled out of our pool. We're not getting any credit for the K through 8 traction that we've gotten. That's what I'm gathering here.
So to your point, so because of the various configurations of our school districts, where some of our students have high school choice and are no longer part of our district, the students that are part of our data K to 6 are not the same students who are necessarily part of our data set, 9 through 12, or 11 in
Yeah, yeah.
particular, 9 through 11. And so, yes, it's not the same students
Skewed.
all the way through, which could have various factors on your data, all of which are out of our control, but we don't have access to the data for students who leave our supervisory union once they leave. And so we don't, and some of them might or might not take the state test depending on where they go to high school. And so they're not included in this data set, and we do not have the capacity to collect or
We don't.
require that. The Agency of Education could.
Certainly does, yeah.
But currently, they do not provide that information back to
I
us.
hope as we're looking for complex solutions to the future, that they're taking into account all this information. Also, it's, to me, and I'm not putting on any of you guys, it's embarrassing that it takes them a year to get us this data back when a computer program can do it in a day. Since every kid's taking a test, the data's there. It's not someone running through a spreadsheet 30 years ago. So this is data they've had. And it can be easily ripped apart a million different ways for them to track different things instead of putting out, presumably, I think, what they want us to see. So that's
Secretary
my-
Saunders has noted that's,
I don't have a tinfoil hat on, but.
yeah.
That was kind of my question, was now that the testing window is open, when will we see the data? Will it be the end of the school year, this time next year? So,
So I know Secretary Saunders, and speaking with the superintendents, has shared her concern with the data against us. I mean, I know that this is, for whatever reason, I think there's a lot that they have to kind of go through and take a look at. But Secretary Saunders has shown an understanding of, if this is going to be meaningful, we need to get these results back into educators and schools' hands in a quick fashion.
The raw data is there. I mean, if I look at this Agency of Education website that they created with these graphs that are, I think they reverse engineered the data they want us to see. And it's breaking down a lot of what's important about Montpelier, equity, which is important to all of us, but they break it down to many subsets of kids. It takes a while to break out this data versus getting our schools back the raw data that says, hey, we're going in the next school year, what do we need to make changes? This does very little for us in March, where we could have been hitting the ground running in September with
And
this
I think
data.
that was one of the things the VSBA reached out and said to Governor Sanders. And, right now, I don't even think Secretary Sanders. Freudian
Promotion.
slip. Sometimes she acts like the governor, I think. But I don't think they have the capacity to do, they don't have the capacity to do what they're supposed to be doing. They're behind on policies that they set, that they were supposed to have deadlines to take testimony on, and they haven't even done that. So to think that this doesn't seem and did not seem to be a priority to them when we wrote as part of the council that I was on from the VSBA, and we did, their response was kind of like, this is just where it's at, this is where we are. They do not seem to be very concerned about it, in my opinion, based on the responses from her office.
And again, just to clarify, we have had access to this data since the fall. So like, our principals have had it, our schools have had it, we have had it, so it's only public access that hasn't been, it's been embargoed, so we have not been allowed
So you're able to
share it.
utilize
So
the data
we even use it
to-
for school-based planning
Okay.
and district-based planning and internal purposes and analysis from the entire school year. It's just we haven't been able to share it with the public.
So, but we've had it in the fall, but in order for this to be effective, we really should be receiving this in the summer.
Yes.
Because teachers the curriculum should be adjusted, should be, changed.
For the school
For day
year.
one, but when we're receiving data in October, that is problematic. And I think that they are aware of that. I think that's been shared on many levels, with regards to this, that
Yes.
if this is really going to truly be meaningful, that we've moved the testing window up now, and it's been opened. There really is no reason why we can't have this data in hand in July or August.
Before
at the absolute
school's out.
latest. Right,
Really.
right.
Because, once your teachers are gone for the summer, you lose the ability to engage them in this analysis process
Correct.
and have them be reflective on what they taught and how they're going to change it for the upcoming school year, which is really what we want to be able to do.
And
So you need to like back it in.
End of May would be
Yeah, that way
great.
you have time at least to meet on it.
Yeah. Put it in their hands.
Yeah.
right?
Two things about timing is, one year, I got to do summer school programs with students, and we used data, the standardized test data that we received in like May to form some groups with, that parents wanted their students, their child to come in, and we used the data to say, okay, what does this student really have to work on? My friend Paula and I did that one summer. It was so useful.
Yep.
It was one use of the data per student. But the other thing, timing-wise, I hope schools would consider the timing of giving the test, because there's got to be student buy-in, especially middle school level. Little kids will do whatever you ask them, which is also making a teacher be very conscientious. But, they do the FastBridge testing. Actually, when I've given it, it's pretty straightforward, and it's not that time-consuming. It might take a student 45 minutes to take the test, but these are so much more involved, and if you have those tests in the spring back to back, it's really overkill to the students, and sometimes they might be sick of taking tests, so it's something to consider, just the timing of it, and also what else is going on in school at the same time as the testing.
All right, before we move on, any other questions about the VTCAP data? So I guess, did you have a question?
one more.
Go ahead.
Maybe behind the scenes, to what extent do you guys see that they're dictating some of these results towards funding decisions, towards the future? A subset of the student group they're looking at is migrants, and showing the growth in equity and index performance. It's 40 kids out of 38,000. Seems like a very small piece of the Vermont pie, but yet it's one of the 12 pieces of statistics we're being talked about. Are they indicating to us, like?
That I really don't know. I do know
I'm not saying you have the answers,
that people can use data to further a narrative.
Yeah.
And I think that's, scores can be politicized, and I think that's what we're seeing right now, is scores are being politicized when they're being taken out of context. And I think, we'll be the first one to tell you that we have a lot of work that we need to do, but that doesn't mean, we have a lot of great things going on in our GRCSU too, and there's a lot of positive signs there. I think, we have growth, but as I said before, to use the ladder analogy, when you have a student who is, say, sitting in a, fifth grade classroom, and they're reading at, say, at the beginning of the year at a kindergarten level reading, and that teacher has gotten them to a third grade level, that's phenomenal. If a teacher can get one grade level jump, but 3 grade levels, that growth is off the charts. The teacher's done a wonderful job, but yet when we get to VTCAP, that student will still be scoring at a 1 or a 2, so they look at that piece of data and says, oh, that teacher has failed, or that school has failed, when actually it's been the converse, that teacher's done a great. So there's just a lot of data you have to take a look at when looking at this, but you can, as my father used to say, figures lie, liars figure. And I think that's just, when you're dealing with data, it can be manipulated in many different ways. And, we're not, like I said, when we look at this, we see, there are a lot of areas of improvement. We also see some positive signs too, so.
Well, they're standardized tests, and what did the state tell us? Meet students where they are. So there might be a little bit of irony in those two statements.
Well.
And I think the other piece is that, the true growth or the true success of your schools, and it's difficult when you have children or students that are going to other schools, but the true success of your school are your graduates and what they have done in 5 years, 4 years, or whatever. Not every student is a standardized test-taking student, and we've seen that throughout the years. That's why we have companies that make standardized tests, and we change them constantly. But you never have enough data to ever show any real growth, because in 3 years, this is going to be gone, and we're going to start again. So you can always say there's no real growth. So I think, for me, standardized tests are such a small percentage. It's a way to penalize districts and SUs if you're basing it on funding, or if you're assessing or evaluating teachers in that capacity, and we don't do that here, but some states do. And I think that, there's always, there's always that light bulb moment when the standardized test doesn't match up to what's happening in the child's real life. And kids have also gotten to the point where they know standardized tests mean 0 going forward. And so until those two things change, I don't think you're going to see a substantial change going from middle school to high school.
Well, thank you for the presentation. There's a lot there, so I take it that your invitation for folks to reach out if you have any questions, because I think there's a lot of information there, and again, if we're seeing it for the first time, it might be beneficial, so. All right, so thank you. I'm going to move us on to personnel. We have contract recommendations and information. So is there a motion to approve the contract recommendations as presented?
I'll make a motion.
Who was that? That was Eric? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Resignations. This is just for information purposes. Were there any questions? All right. And then finance, monthly reports, did Amanda?
Oh, sorry. I just had a question about the open positions that were also listed.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a set time that we post positions by?
What do you mean, Amanda?
I just noticed like there's been some resignations that still aren't posted, but then there's
So-
also sometimes where they're posted and then taken back and then put back up. I wasn't sure if there was like a specific timeline that we follow with our.
Typically, when someone has resigned, we don't post that position until it has been officially approved at the board meeting. And so those positions will be posted tomorrow. And I'm not quite certain why, if there's a situation been posted, been taken down, then reposted. I do know that sometimes it's with school spring that we will do a refresh where because the longer it sits, the more it gets pushed down. And so what we'll do is we will disable that post for a couple of days, and then we'll repost it, because then it gets put right back up. So when someone is looking, say, for like a math teacher, if we don't do that refresh, we might be at the very bottom of that list, and so they may apply. But by somebody doing the refresh, we then are put as most recent or most current. So that's the strategy that we will do every once in a while, particularly when that position's been sitting open for a very long time.
Yeah, or an anticipated.
Yeah, right.
Like sometimes if we might have an anticipated position that's posted, like an anticipated opening, but then we'll pull that down and put up the actual posting once we receive a resignation and it's accepted by a board. Like if we know for sure someone's going, but we don't have board approval yet, we'll post it as anticipated.
So do you actually need us to take action on the resignations? Because it says informational.
But we just wait until
It's gone before the board.
All right. Did that answer your question, Amanda?
Yeah, it seems like basically once it's approved by the local board, it's then posted on with the list of the whole SU resignation or openings.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So monthly reports, were there any questions on the monthly reports that were in your packet? All right. So we have no old business, new business.
Well, can we just talk under, I don't know, old or new? The Senator Bolgotz's shared districts are kind of getting a lot of Bongarts. And today, the VSA gave testimony about that. It would put us in what's considered the Western District, which would have 9,172, which.
some of us would also go in Southwest.
Right.
Yeah, just Wells.
No, Middletown.
No, Middletown would be in this. Middletown's in this.
In the most recent one?
It was in the one that VSA just sent out from, unless he took it off. So Middletown was in this one.
Yeah.
It went
Well, the
from
original-
Starksboro to Middletown.
The original map that Senator Bongartz proposed had Middletown Springs, Wells, and Ira were part of the Southwest.
Yeah.
Well, everything else was part of the West.
Well,
So
this one had Wells. I don't know that it
I think
had-
that was the newest one that was in the VSBA.
So tomorrow, the VSBA is having, their legislative committee is meeting, and we're going over what the VSA testified today about, which they provided a timeline and timeline and testimony, framework testimony, for incremental changes. And, so it just, I think it's important to keep up with this, and Eric's, and Chris, you're going to be meeting on the 20th, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
So is that something you wanted to,
I'm on the legislative committee, so I just think it's important that we know that people are staying aware that, I mean, this seems to be getting, the way the districts are kind of being broken out now seems to be gaining the most traction, and they're taking testimony on that. It seems to be kind of the meet in the middle place, I guess. People seem to be liking those numbers. They're close to 10,000. That was the number they wanted. So,
okay.
I just think it's important that people, you know, stay current. It's moving. I mean, it's not moving as quickly as it was, but it's still moving.
I'll have to catch up with that because I haven't been able to keep up with it.
You catch up over the weekend. They never do anything on Monday. So,
I'm doing fun stuff on the weekends. All right. Public comment. Are there any public comment tonight? All right. All right, so our next meeting, April 1st. Any future agenda items to put on that agenda? Amanda?
Could we add policy review for F23, F7, and parts of F8 that were rescinded in June of 23? I could come with some more information if it's put on the agenda.
But can you tell us what those policies are?
F what?
23, 7, and 8. What are those?
F23, F7, and then parts of F8 that was rescinded in 2023.
Okay.
And what are those?
It's student athletics clubs and activities, interscholastic sports, and equity.
All right, so you want this on the agenda and to make some recommended changes?
Yeah, if I could bring some recommended changes. I'm filling in as an alternate tonight, but I'd be happy to attend as a member of the public or even email you guys some suggested changes that I have in the.
Why wouldn't that go to policy
if
first?
the board agrees.
What's that?
Why wouldn't that just go to policy first before it came here?
Because we've already completed our policy review, and so all these policies have been reviewed, and we don't meet until May. So.
Right, but collectively, we haven't been reviewing policies here. That's why we have a policy committee.
Right. And so, because we've already done that review, like, we're not, like, once we meet in May,
Yeah.
like, we may not meet for months because there's nothing to meet about, really. So, it's, you know, my thought is that it could come to the board and the board can decide if it should just go straight to policy committee, or the board would consider any recommended changes.
So I guess to have a viable discussion, I'd like to know what it is before I come and am seated at the table. I don't want to have the information the night in the meeting. I want to be able to see what that is to look at.
Right. Well, we'd just be basically having a whole conversation about it without having it on the agenda, if that was the case.
No. I'm saying if it's on the agenda, I want to know what the issues are. I just don't want to, I don't want to show
yeah.
up here and say, F23, we're going to discuss that. I want to know before I come to the April meeting, what are we discussing about F23? What are we discussing about F7? And were those issues that were discussed in policy committee? I think that's part of the foundation of if we're reassessing them.
Okay. Yeah, and that's why I had asked if Amanda would be providing some kind of recommendation and explanation on that. So I guess,
I can email it to you guys before the meeting, if that's something you would like. Or if you guys want to reach out to me individually, I'd be happy to tell you, or I just didn't know if the board wanted to, if I came with a recommendation, look at it and decide if the board wanted to approve it or send it to policy.
So my follow-up question is this coming from your board?
Is it coming
Or
from-
is this coming from a board member or a member of the public?
This is coming, if I was a member of the public tonight, I would have the same question to ask you guys to put it on the agenda and come with information, but I'm filling in as an alternate, so I'm still just asking the same question if it's something that would like to be looked at, and if so, I could provide information.
My question is, has this been discussed at your board meeting?
no, this is, I guess you would say a parent or,
And when I reached out, I was told it should come to the SU board to be discussed to decide if it goes to policy committee or if it's discussed at the SU board. So you guys get to decide first.
Are we just gonna refer it to the policy committee?
I don't know what the issues are, or, so it's hard to make that assessment. So, I mean, I don't want to spend the April meeting discussing 3 policies, I guess.
okay,
If it's not,
I think, for some basic information, I think
Sure.
we have situations in some of our schools in RSU, particularly our smaller schools, where students are excluded from athletics.
Well,
clubs,
Amanda,
activities.
I don't want to get into,
Then we could.
Amanda?
we could just
but that
look at
doesn't seem like a
attendance.
policy issue.
I don't want to get into a whole discussion about it. I think the question is to put it on the agenda or not. So,
I just want to make sure it's a policy discussion, that it's not a centralized.
There's things in F8 that didn't carry over to F7, so that's why I feel it's a policy thing. It could be easily fixed by carrying words from F8 that was rescinded into F7 that I feel got left behind.
yeah.
Pleasure of the board.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I said if the board doesn't want to take this work on, then we would just defer to policy committee and go from there. Thoughts, opinions?
So Eric, you laid out a great flow chart several months ago on how this circulates, right?
Yep.
Great flow chart, so let's just follow the flow chart. Out of policy, it's your, you need the policy approved, and then it goes to individual districts, and then it has to circulate around it does. You have, I mean, just let's follow the flow chart.
Yeah, and the flow chart, there is a, well, I guess it doesn't apply in this.
I say it can be placed on the agenda as long as we receive all information ahead of time to review.
Yeah.
I would put it on the agenda as a discussion, action item, action to defer to policy. I don't think, I don't know. I question the SU taking, if it was coming from your board, I guess it would be a different conversation. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
That if there was consensus, like the Quarry Valley Board brought something to the last meeting, but it was sent as a board decision to discuss at this level. So I feel like these policies have gone through review through policy committee. They have gone to every local board, and they've come here, and they've gone through lots of iterations. I mean, from grammar to, language to different things. So I guess if there's no objection, we could bring it here to discuss. But personally, I don't feel comfortable taking action here. I think it would then have to be deferred to policy, in my opinion, if there is action to be taken. or recommendations, I guess, to be made.
Have the administrators, have you heard, is this the first you're hearing about this, Chris? This issue,
Well, this
these
is this is
issues?
a policy thing. So we don't deal with policy. The boards deal with policy.
Understood, but I didn't know if this was an issue at a student level, like my student isn't being able to participate in a school sport.
We've been made aware of an issue, yes.
Okay, that's where I was going from that
Yes.
perspective, because we seem to be dealing with,
But that becomes a
Those
person,
things.
Correct, but that's right. But
or student issue. That's not a policy issue to come to this board, and student issues don't come to this board until they've gone through the channel.
the chain.
So, I just don't want to jump through too many hoops.
I'm not a rules person, but
No,
I think
really?
to me it'd be, is this, to Lisa's point, is this a board member bringing a policy issue to the table and saying, I'd like to review the policy, or is this a person from the public, which I would believe would be in the opening part of the meeting, saying, this is my public comment, I've got an issue with this, and I'd like the board to consider, or is this a board bringing it to us? Those are two different things, and they have two different spots in a meeting versus new business versus public parent comment saying, I want you guys to look at this, then we discuss, then flow chart it to the policy committee.
Right.
That's a big difference, and I know you're stepping in tonight as an alternate, but that's, me as a parent coming here versus me as a board member with tasks from my board is two different complete conversations and how we started off.
Kind of complicates everything. Okay.
Well, I just want to make sure it's a policy issue. It's not a building-based personnel student issue. I think that's.
I can maybe clarify that, yes, all of the channels have been gone through, yes. If George was here tonight and I wasn't an alternate, I would have spoken at first or second public comment with the same question of, would the board like to put it on the agenda? And I guess that's really the only question, like, does the board want to put it on the agenda?
Well,
And
what are the channels?
discuss it because I was told that policies have to go to the SU, and then the SU board decides if they go to policy committee or not. So George would be here typically, and I am the assigned alternate, but George is not here, so I'm here as alternate, but I'm also still a mom every day as well.
Oh, one question
So
in
if
the.
that helped answer your question.
Okay, and are the policies for the whole, all the schools in the
Yes.
district are the same?
Yes.
Okay. I wondered about that. Okay.
So what are the, I guess I'm not sure what the channels are or the process that's been gone through to this point, other than just asking if it should come to this board? Is that the process thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with admin and been advised to come to this board.
And I think the intention is to change current policy
Yeah,
for,
really just to include parts of F8. So F8 was rescinded, I think, in June of 2023. And there's wording in F8 that I feel should be included in F7. So that would be the discussion I would like to have.
okay.
And did this discussion take place at your local board when we were reviewing these policies?
I
think so, yeah.
No, I mean, a lot of these policies were reviewed in 23, 24.
No, I understand that, but, I mean, a lot of policies had generated discussion. So I'm just wondering if,
Amanda, did they?
So this policy was already approved by our board before I had any discussions with any admin. So the policy had already been approved locally. And I didn't catch the wording change. I don't believe I was on policy then either. But I didn't catch the wording change when F8 was rescinded to include the changes into F7.
can you just tell me, do we know what the policies are just ahead? I mean, do we have the headings of them just so we know what they are or no?
F8 is interscholastic sports, F7 is student athletics clubs and activities, and F23 is our activity policy.
All right. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a pretty in-depth conversation. So again, I don't know if the board wants to take on this discussion or just refer it to a committee, and that's really the question at hand. If folks don't feel comfortable with this type of request, and
I feel like it's prudent at this point to have a 5-minute discussion whether we think it's prudent to kick it back to policy or not, kind of like the grand jury. Do we feel it's an issue? If yes, then we kick it to policy. I don't even know what we're talking about, because I haven't read any of them. I don't want to spend 30 minutes on it, because we're going to, ultimately, if we want to do something, we're going to kick it to policy. So I think we can decipher next time, understanding what those 3 pieces are, if we want to tackle it back in committee, and then they can bring it back to us.
right, that's what I was getting at. I think
Just get the general overview of it.
if we don't want to take it on in our April meeting on the agenda, then that would probably be the next step, is just to send it to policy committee.
Okay.
Yeah, what would be the best benefit? Because obviously there's some issue that needs to be addressed, so what would work best for this question?
The policy committee could probably do a deeper dive
Yeah.
into these issues, would be my thought. But as I mentioned,
Is this on your April agenda for your local board to discuss?
no,
We haven't set our agendas yet.
No, but I mean, you ask at the end of the meeting for agenda items, so I'm just,
Yeah.
if it's a concern, I guess, it just seems to me that the likely avenue would go to your local board for discussion, and then your board decides to bring it forward, but.
well, and I think it'd be a similar conversation that we're having now. So,
A little strange.
And then if the local board decided to, all right, let's send it to the SU board, and the SU board send it to the policy committee, a lot of the policy committee is an SU committee, and so that's where pretty much everything starts. So, yes, it was my recommendation that it come to this board first to determine if it would be discussed here or wait until policy committee. But, you know, I don't know, I judge them by some reactions that most folks feel that it should just go to policy committee.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing stopping Amanda to come to the April meeting and speak under open public comment, whether you put it on the agenda or not.
Of course, yeah.
So,
Okay. Not hearing a whole lot of input on whether or not you want it on the agenda or not. So,
I would say we block out 5 minutes under public comment for Amanda to speak to this, and we could decide at that point whether to take it further or send it to policy, because policy's not meeting till May, so it's not like in a month it's going to make a big deal. You don't have a meeting till May, so we could still have it on the April agenda to get the gist of it, to see if we want to support sending it further. And then if so, you can place it on your May policy committee meeting.
okay,
That would be my recommendation.
for April.
Yes.
So moved. I'm
All right.
not gonna do that.
Yeah. April.
But I still
We
would
got
like
there.
I would still like the information ahead of time, so we're not just,
No, it would be.
having
Well,
blanket
usually-
conversations.
Because the town
I think it would
meeting,
be.
this would have
Yeah.
been March 3rd.
Yeah, okay.
You signed up?
All right, so, is there any objection to that? Okay, great. So we don't have an executive session. That concludes our business, so a motion to adjourn at 8:03. Be great.
So moved. So moved.
Was that, who was that? Was Colin? All right.